6:05. I call a meeting to order. We have roll call, please.
Commissioner Dinko?
Present.
Commissioner Wall?
Present.
Commissioner Ward?
Here.
Vice Chair Perillo will be marked absent. Chair DaCosta?
Present. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Right hand over your heart. Ready, begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Forgive me, I failed to grab an agenda.
I think I asked one.
I got one.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
I would assume not, 'cause it's busy fire day today. It was opening up the ballot and
Thank you, everyone, for being here this evening. To begin, item number 3, presentations. We have a code enforcement update.
Good evening, Chairman DaCosta, Commissioners. I have for you, since our last meeting, the code enforcement cases that have opened, closed, and the code enforcement case types that we've seen more recently. We've had a total of 135 cases open in the last 30 days. 81 of those are open, 54 have closed. That's given us an average of 4.5 reports created a day, with about an average of one closing a day. The average time has been about 4 days to close in the last 30. The fastest close type has been the illegal dumping. This was more consistent with the last report I had given you, because illegal dumping, we're still able to respond for what is in public right of way and pull that off, physically, and close that. Most common has been illegal dumping, and luckily our least common, and this is also related to the marijuana grow houses, has been unpermitted structures, which luckily we've not seen as much in the last 30 days. Our signs pulled by our code enforcement technician on Saturdays, we have 308 signs pulled. The code enforcement volunteer that we have on Sundays pulled in the last 30 days 146 signs. And then we have a total of 331 citations issued by our street sweeping officer in the last 30 days. And just as a staffing update, we have our code enforcement technician full-time, Jared Perez, starting Monday, October 30th. Some of you may remember Jared Perez, as he had almost a year with the city of Eastville, volunteering his time on weekdays and weekends, assisting the code enforcement department. Jared Perez was also recognized during our last council meeting for his time with the city. We're very excited for this newest addition and have high hopes for his contribution to the department as well as the city. And thank you for your time. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to field those.
Any questions, commissioners?
No.
Thank you.
Commissioner or Chairperson DaCosta, just to add to Andy's report real quick, wanted to clarify with the code enforcement technician that's coming on board, he is fully licensed, so he does have certification with KCO for beginning, intermediate, and advanced, and he does have his PCA 32, so he can do field work and he can write citations. He's brought in as a code enforcement technician because he's very new. to the profession. So Andy will be taking him under his wing and giving him great training. And we hope to someday see him, transition into a code enforcement officer, but that typically does require more years of service and experience. So,
And that's a full-time position, is that correct?
yes, sir. That's a full-time position. Thank you.
Thank you. Item 3.2, monthly police department update.
Good evening.
Good evening, sir.
Sorry about that. We'll go over some of the calls for service and the more important calls that we handled, the August to September numbers. Total calls for service in September was a 2523. It's a 20% decrease from August, which was a 3172 total calls for service. Traffic collisions increased 9% from 64 in August to 70 in September. The total citations increased by about 4% from 483 in August to 504 in September. Of those 504, 268 of those were moving violations or hazardous moving violations. Our parking sites decreased significantly, 51% from 555 in August to 268 in September. Vehicle burglaries decreased significantly from 43 in August to 25 in September. Noise calls also decreased 12% from 66 in August to 58 in September. And then mail thefts increased significantly, a 310% increase from 10 in August to 41 in September. With the noise calls, those generally spike in the summer months, so we're hoping the decrease continues as we enter into the fall and winter months. The August UCR stats are 0 homicides, 0 rapes. There were 4 robberies, 3 aggravated assaults, 29 burglaries, 88 larceny thefts, 11 vehicle thefts, and 0 arsons. And the UCR stats for September are not available at this time. We do have an update on our grant funding. I think last time we announced the monies that we got, which was $95,000 for the 2017-2018 fiscal year, which was an increase of $40,000 from the previous year. At the last meeting, we didn't have the breakdown on the specific required operations. We have those now. It's broken down into alcohol operations and enforcement operations. In the alcohol operations, the minimum required number of DUI saturation operations is 10. We're going to have 4 DUI checkpoints, 3 stakeout operations, 1 court sting operation, and 1 warrant service operation. So the checkpoint's self-explanatory. Stakeout operations are essentially you find habitual DUI offenders. You do surveillance on their house and you try and catch them driving either on a suspended license or under the influence of alcohol or drugs. The court sting operation works essentially the same way, but we do those at the courthouses. So once the person is advised by the judge that their license is suspended, we will again conduct surveillance on them, follow them out to the parking lot. If they drive away in a vehicle, have a deputy stop them and issue them a citation and tow their vehicle. The warrant service operation is essentially finding individuals with DUI-related arrest warrants and then serving those. For the enforcement operations, we have 10 traffic enforcement operations, which is your general traffic enforcement for hazardous violations. We have 4 distracted driver operations, which would cover your texting, operating cell phones, that sort of thing. We have 4 motorcycle safety enforcement operations. We have 4 nighttime click it or ticket operations. We have 2 pedestrian safety operations, and we also have a minimum of 2 traffic safety presentations. So some of those ops, we may do more than the minimum required also. It just depends on how the money is spent. So those are the minimum numbers. We may end up doing more. And I don't have anything else for you. Any questions?
I have a question reference mail theft. Can I get a read back on the numbers on that? I think it was 10 and it went up to,
It was 10 in August. It went up to 41 in September.
do you know, were those predominantly like community box break-ins?
I don't have the specifics on each one. So it could be, if you look back at the previous month in July, I believe it was at 20-something. So it's kind of constantly rising and falling, but it could depend on if it was an individual mailbox, that would be, you know, statted as one. If you have a community mailbox where there's, you know, 15 or 20 mailboxes, they could essentially take 15 or 20 individual reports on a single incident. So you have numerous victims with one break into a community mailbox. So that could affect the numbers a little bit.
Would your deputies take that as one report or multiple reports, do you know?
Generally, you would take it per victim. So if you have multiple victims that are missing mail, you can take that as multiple reports. So each victim would essentially have their own report number.
And just a thought is, I know the mail thefts have kind of ebbed and tide, you know, a little bit in Southern California. And I'm curious to know if your investigators had an opportunity to reach out to the postal inspectors in the region.
I don't know any specific cases. I can tell you from experience, working on both our special enforcement team and our detective bureau. We have a very good relationship with the postal inspectors. We work with them very regularly. It's just they have different thresholds for prosecution. So almost every mail theft case of significance, they're in contact with them and kind of running the case by them. Most of the time, their prosecution is several months behind so if there's an arrest, it's normally several months behind before they can get a federal indictment, and that's if it meets all their federal thresholds. So it's kind of case by case, but I don't have specifics on any one case, but I can tell you that the working relationship is very good between us and the postal inspectors.
Yeah, I'm not sure who they're working with, but maybe offline I could speak with you about it. There's just, their threshold, from what I understand, isn't as high as I once thought. And the nice thing is, prosecuting in California, you know, the Superior Court it can be tough because with their Prop 47s, and I know with federal charges, they get a little bit better mandatory sentencing. So just a thought. I mean, maybe you've already been doing it, and just maybe food for thought, if we could maybe look at that down the
Yeah,
line.
we can definitely talk offline.
Any other questions?
Hey, you know, I have a question, but maybe, Aaliyah, maybe this is better addressed under item 4.6. It's about the actual traffic collisions, and I'm asking you, maybe you can tell me, should I address this under 4.6? I'm curious to know is how many were actually street racing, or if any were street racing, and also on the 211s. I'm sorry, the robberies. On the robberies, how many were actually residential, or street 211s, or business 211s? So would that be better addressed at 4.6?
I believe it would be, as
Okay.
I'll do a report at your request for those statistics, but just to segue into that kind of, we didn't break those columns out into those things, so if that's going to be requested when we get to that item, I would need to work with the Sheriff's Department on how we're going to further break down the statistics that are shown.
Okay, thank you.
Along with the crime statistics, I'm curious to know, your report sounded more all-encompassing for the months of August comparison to your month of February report. We're not going into the mid-months any longer, as per last meeting. I'm just curious to know. So the report you just gave us sounded like you had an all-encompassing August report comparison with an all-encompassing September report. And the previous meeting, you had from the last meeting to, or it was a set date, mid-month to mid-month.
Yeah, my understanding, I believe it was 2 meetings back, the last one that Sergeant Davis attended,
Yeah.
they requested to go month to month rather than, 3 weeks in or whenever the meeting
Got it.
fell. So, yeah, I've been doing just
Monthly reporting.
month to month totals.
Just wanted clarification. Thank you.
Commissioner, I was just being more consistent with the report that Aaliyah
Yes.
produces, so we can be more consistent with
Thank you. Nothing further. Thank you for your report, sir.
Thank you.
There's no monthly fire report at this time. I'm sure they're still battling with fires abroad. I would like to break out item 4.1, Public Safety Commission minutes. From the last meeting, I asked for an agenda item regarding our cameras and the setup around the city, how effective they may have been. I don't know if that was brought to light for this meeting, and if not, we can entertain it at a future agenda item.
We did have that written down as a potential agenda item, and we are going to be working with City Engineer Joe Engeron when he returns on his vacation, so we'll anticipate having that available for you at the next commission meeting.
Very good. And other than 4.6, Commissioners, is there any other items we need to pull from the consent calendar to discuss that you're aware of? No? No. So any further questions on 4.6?
Okay, so we're moving down to 4.6.
Well, we're in the consent calendar now.
So, yeah,
we're
so,
gonna-
so my question
because
earlier,
we normally, I'm sorry to interrupt.
okay.
We normally motion to move to accept the entire consent calendar. Just bringing my colleague up to speed, we motion to move the entire consent calendar and then vote on it collectively as a commission. So at this time, he had an item he wanted to discuss over crime statistics. I brought up the last meeting that we had in the minutes.
About
having-
about the cameras?
Yes. So just wanted to make sure you're aware of what we're doing now.
Well, I got you. We're pulling 4.6.
We are, sir.
Right,
Thank
gotcha.
you. Go ahead, sir.
yeah, to go back to what I was earlier discussing, and I don't want to nitpick it too much, but I've heard concerns about drag racing in and around the area. And so my concern was, I think the numbers were 64 to 70 traffic collisions went up, I think. My question was, do we know if any of those collisions were as a result of street racing?
Off the top of my head, I don't know.
Okay, all right. And also on the, and I keep saying 211, I apologize, on the robberies, do we know the breakdown as opposed to residential, street robberies, and commercial robberies? Do we know, like, are they hitting the Home Depot, or are they just interacting with people on the streets, or are they actually doing home invasions? If we know.
I don't know that off the
Okay,
top of my head.
that's fine.
We can get back to you on that one.
Okay, that's fine. Thank you, sir.
I mean, how many total were there, robberies?
Robberies?
Yeah.
There were 4.
If I may add, I apologize. I believe 2 of them were cell phones taken from kids, so by
Okay.
force. And I'm not sure what the other 2 were. I think they both were commercial, but I'm not positive.
Okay, thank you, sir.
So we'll clarify.
And since we're talking about street racing, I had mentioned in one of the previous meetings, I'm not sure if the OTS grant money would be able to be a part of looking at or entertaining an enforcement for street racing in and around the city.
Yeah, so under the traffic enforcement operations, we have 10 of those, and that would include any hazardous driving action. So it would be speed, street racing, all that would fall under that OTS grant.
And one of the items that you mentioned was for motorcycle safety. Are you just dealing in general with helmet use and proper
Yeah,
operation of?
That's specifically targeting enforcement of motorcycles. So again, any hazardous violations, moving violations, and equipment violations, helmets.
Understood. Thank you. I have nothing further. Anybody else?
I have something on that. I remember at the last meeting, I was here in the audience, and I remember a conversation with the commission members with regard to our traffic enforcement. And I think the question was, and it wasn't necessarily answered or asking for an answer right then, but is the traffic enforcement that we're working on, the tickets, specifically targeting areas where we have traffic problems or the high level of traffic accidents? And I think with that conversation being out there in the last meeting, with the OTS grant money, hopefully that we can target those specific areas. We can, rather than just putting out a blanket program, hopefully target specific areas where we have the highest level of traffic collisions or risk to kids. And
Mr. Commissioner, we identified 5 areas where we've had the most traffic collisions, and so we're gonna concentrate enforcement in those areas.
perfect. Awesome. Thank you.
Commissioner Ward, if I can just ask a quick question of clarification. For the breakdown of statistics for burglaries or robberies, are you comfortable with the Sheriff's Department providing those as requested verbally as to not include them into the statistics that we've
Absolutely.
created?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
So along with the crime statistics that's being worked on as a separate item, do we include all of these for consent calendar, accepting the motion at this time, or do we include the crime statistics as well? All encompassing of the consent calendar at this
I
time?
believe it's all part of the
Okay,
approval.
so a motion's in order for accepting all the consent calendar as we see it written.
Make a motion to accept the calendar.
Motioned and seconded.
All right.
Can we call for a vote, please?
Commissioner Dinko,
Aye.
Commissioner Wall,
Yes.
Commissioner Ward,
Yes.
Chair DaCosta.
Yes.
Motion passes 4-0.
Commission business items. Next month is the fourth Tuesday falls within the holiday time frame of Thanksgiving as well as December. So at this time, we can discuss whether or not we'd like to change the time frame on those meetings or forego a meeting until January. Is that correct, Michelle?
Good evening, Commissioners. That is correct. So, excuse me, losing my voice here. The months of November and December are typically very light. This school will be closed for several days during the Thanksgiving holiday, during which time your commission meeting would regularly be scheduled November 28th. So the question for the commissioners is, would you like us to attempt to move the meeting? Again, it would be based upon the availability of the school site. Or would you like to go dark for the month of November? And the same, well, the commission meeting for the month of December, it was moved to December 19th. So we want to bring that to the commissioner's attention, particularly for Commissioner Dinko, as
Yes.
I know you're new and you probably don't have the calendar that was approved previously. I understand there's travel plans and whatnot, so again, it's as the commission wishes us to proceed, we can attempt to move the meeting for November to another Tuesday that is suitable, or you can go dark. And the November 19th meeting, or the November meeting, excuse me, December meeting was moved to December 19th, and we hope that does not conflict with anyone's travel schedule.
I'm fine.
I think we should move.
Move the November.
Yeah, move
When,
Okay.
do you know when CNUSD closes for the winter? I can't remember. I don't have the calendar up.
I actually happen to
I
have it
should
up.
know.
Just
I
give me,
usually have it in my calendar and I don't.
give me one moment. Sorry, it's loading. So the November, it's still loading, my apologies, but they are closed, the last day of school will be, well, you know what, I'm sorry, I have to look at this calendar because this is a track system for Rosa Parks. And the high school and intermediate schools are on traditional modified, so give me 1 second while this loads and I'll be able to tell you. I do know for the month of December, the last day of school is December 15th. That's a Friday. And students do not go back to school until, I believe, I want to say January 8th.
So the school would be closed.
The school would be closed on our 19th meeting then.
Correct. So we would likely need to move that to City Hall if the commission wishes to continue with the December meeting.
We have enough room?
It's going to be very cozy.
Unless we move to like, the community center. But, I mean, I don't.
We could try to move to the community center. However, it's something I'd have to reserve and it's not free.
Yeah, I know.
There's that.
Michelle, would it help at all if we move the 19th to the 12th? Will school still be closed on that date?
In December?
Yeah.
No, school should be open on the 12th. We'd have to check with Rosa Parks to see what their availability is.
Will that throw a wrench into your schedule, though? I don't want to mess up.
No, I don't believe so.
And since we're discussing the movement of meetings and that second Tuesday of December, can we entertain looking at the second Tuesday of November?
Second
be the 14th.
Tuesday of November is the same night as the town hall meeting,
Oh, yeah.
Town hall meeting.
which will be in this very room
Yes.
What about
at 6:30.
I think we can forego the November meeting
Yeah,
and then we'll just focus on the movement of the December meeting.
Okay, just for clarification, Thanksgiving break, according to the school calendar, the last day of school is November 17th. And then the schools go back in session on November 27th. So the school should be open on the 28th if the commission wishes to continue with that meeting on the 28th.
So we can keep the fourth Tuesday as scheduled.
Yes, unless any of you have travel plans or we lose quorum.
I really don't go anywhere.
You're not going, okay. So November 28th will stand?
Yes. That being said, looking at the calendar for December now, you mentioned that the meeting was moved to the 19th and we just discussed that school is closed.
Yes, sir.
So maybe we can be dark for the December month.
Oh, we
As
were
a
talking
result.
about the 12th.
I know.
Oh, but maybe
I'm
December
up.
be dark.
Right, because
Okay.
we'd have only 2 weeks from meeting
Oh, right,
to our
yeah.
next
Mm.
meeting.
Yeah.
And we don't have.
I'm going
a
dark
whole lot.
one thing then.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, we've gone 2 before in the past,
Alright.
so I don't see it being,
That's a
Too
very
much.
good point, that,
Yeah.
yes, it would only be 2 weeks later.
yes.
Good point.
So we'll stick with our November meeting on the 28th here once again, and then December will be dark, returning in January of 2018.
Okay, perfect. We have direction, and we will make sure to notify all of the commissioners of those changes. There's only two meetings for the city council one for November and one for December. At the December 13th meeting, the city council will be reaffirming their commission appointments. And so you're obviously invited to attend that city council meeting. And they will also be selecting a new mayor or continuing the same mayor, so.
And what was the date again on that one?
The city council meeting is December 13th.
Okay.
So dark for the month of December, and November 28th stands.
Yes, ma'am.
Perfect.
Everybody's good on that?
Yep.
Thank you.
I'll be here.
Moving on to any public comments?
I'm sorry, just for the record, would you take a motion and vote on
Oh,
going dark
sorry,
for
yes.
November, or excuse me, December?
So should we don't need the motion for the November 28th meeting since that's scheduled as planned. And a motion is in order to go dark for December in lieu of school closures and the holiday schedule.
Second motion.
Second.
Call for a vote, please.
Commissioner Dinko,
Aye.
Commissioner Wall,
Aye.
Commissioner Ward,
Yes.
Chair DaCosta.
Aye.
Motion passes 4-0.
Thank you.
Thank you, Michelle. Moving on to public comment. Were there any at this time?
No, we have not received any.
City staff report. Item 7.
Good evening, commissioners, members of the public. Just first want to thank Aaliyah for a very extensive presentation at the last Public Safety Commission meeting.
Absolutely.
Yes, I understand it was the biggest turnout we've ever had. So we will continue to push with some initiatives, similar initiatives throughout the year. I would like to also take a moment to formally introduce everyone to our newest commissioner. He was appointed at the last city council meeting. This is Commissioner Christian Dinko. So welcome aboard, sir. And I would like to give you his bio so that you have a little better understanding of the contribution that he will be making to the commission. So Christian Dinko and his wife Judith have been residents of the city of Eastvale for 10 years. They have 4 children: Savannah, a senior at Roosevelt; Delaney, a sophomore at Roosevelt, and 2 other children, Connor, 12, and Brady, 9, who are both in elementary school. Christian holds a bachelor's degree from California Baptist University. Woo, Lancers. In leadership and public administration, and has been in law enforcement for over 25 years. He is currently a lieutenant with the Riverside Police Department, supervising aviation, SWAT, a parole and corrections team, hostage negotiations team, and a newly formed UAV program. And I apologize, I don't know what that stands for.
It's a unmanned aerial vehicle. It's like drones.
Like a drone,
Yeah,
okay.
drones, yeah.
He has previously worked as a detective in investigations, narcotics, auto theft, property crimes, SWAT, major investigations, community services bureau, and press information officer. He's been president of the Eastvale Little League for the last 5 years, and he's an active coach in Little League as well. He is also a youth soccer coach with Empire Soccer and a youth football coach for Friday Night Lights youth flag football. He has also previously coached for Eastvale Pop Warner football program. Christian states that he is dedicated to the community in service and is looking forward to contributing to our great city of Eastvale. So welcome aboard, sir.
Thank you.
My last announcement that I would like to share with the commission is that effective at the next meeting, Aaliyah is going to be taking the lead and running the meetings. So she'll be managing the agenda, and I'll always be here, but she's going to be taking the lead. I won't be attending the meetings anymore unless, of course, there's something that you need me to attend for. But Aaliyah will be holding down the fort and assisting you moving forward.
Hold on.
Thank you.
On the public information officer side, I wanted to give you a few updates. We just ordered our next installation of military banners. So that should be installed, I think, in late November. I was told by the company that we contract with, or that we have the contract with, that November's their busiest month. So we're not going to be able to get those installed till the end of November, which means 99% of the poles that we are eligible to put the banners on will be filled on Archibald. So that'll be something positive moving forward. Wanted to also mention that we got our roadway adoption signs in. So our roadway adoption program, I know it's not really public safety, but just in case you're asked by constituents, we're getting a lot more applications for folks that want to adopt roadways. We got our signs in, so we'll be working with Public Works on the installation of those signs. There's going to be quite a bit. I think you'll be impressed with how involved the community's been with keeping Eastville beautiful. And the last thing I wanted to mention was November 11th, we're going to have the Veterans Day celebration. I believe it'll be at the American Heroes Park. We're still vetting through the planning process, but we'll get a formal invitation on your calendars, hopefully by tomorrow or Thursday, as we get details nailed down. And actually two things, I'm sorry, that wasn't the last thing. One other thing is the crime statistics webpage has been developed. I was just waiting final approval from the Captain Hedge and Michelle, to just make sure everything was perfected and that it displayed the information that we wanted to display. So it's in the queue, ready to go. So as soon as I receive approval, it should be ready to go live by tomorrow, I would assume. And Commissioner Dinko, you mentioned something about working with the Postal Inspection Service on mail theft, and I just wanted to make sure that you were aware. Several months ago, we did have a presentation where we brought down the Postal Inspection Service representatives to a meeting here at Public Safety Commission, where they were able to field some questions. Some questions they weren't able to field, as they were the postmaster's responsibility out of Corona. But we did do a big push for that. We got a decent turnout, and we did develop a mail theft webpage on our website. So if you were to go to, I believe under Police Department, there's a mail theft webpage, and it's pretty comprehensive, frequently asked questions, what's been done in the past. We get a lot of questions of what's been done. We showcase the great work that the Sheriff's Department is doing when they catch the bad guy, so to speak. How do I report mail theft? We get a lot of those questions. We've even developed a one-page handout that we dispense to the public. And periodically, as we see the crime theft increasing in numbers or on posts on social media, we'll do a push on e-notification and through our social media websites that lets people know that, we're sorry this happened, but this is what you do next in moving forward, so that they understand all of the reporting mechanisms and things moving forward. So I just wanted to make sure you were aware of that.
I wasn't, thank you.
You're welcome. And lastly, one more thing. There's always one more thing. There is Coffee with the Cop. Hopefully you guys weren't going to mention that, but Coffee with the Cop is on the 26th. From 8 to 10, that's Thursday, 8 to 10, right here at Farmer Boys.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Which cop?
It'll be Sergeant Rowan.
I can drink a lot of coffee, though.
Oh, and the 5K, 10K? Sorry, Aaliyah, the 5K and 10K run? Do you have any info on that?
I have not received the info for that. I've seen some
Blurbs
about it on social media, but I have not been contacted yet as to advertise for it.
Okay.
But I will be proactive and try to get the information out.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Good evening, Commissioners. I'm with Public Works. Just to let you know what's happening around the city, we've been preparing to resurface portions of Hamner Avenue. And there's been probably noticed a few traffic delays. Mostly has been lane closures, but they maintain traffic in two directions. That's going to be overlaid. Probably that'll occur starting tomorrow and finish on Friday. There's also been some late night closures on Hamner Avenue north of Limonite for installation of a storm drain. We've probably got one more week of night closure, starting about 8 o'clock at night, finishing about 5 o'clock in the morning. And we should pretty much done with the night closures on Hamner, and then on the northeast corner of Hamner and Limonite, there's a storm drain lateral that's being installed. That's going to be about a week's worth of work. They'll be installing K-rail, and that'll be during the day. So that shouldn't be quite so bad. We also have our slurry project, which covers a large portion of the city starting in about a week, and that'll be kicking off. For the next meeting, we have our complete street safety assessment. It was performed, it was actually part of a grant. It's through the Berkeley Traffic Safety Commission, Traffic Safety Group out of the University of Berkeley. And there's two professionals that worked on that here in the city, and they looked at all of our statistics, and they spent some time in the city and made recommendations, and they prepared a report. And it's very useful for getting grants, but that'll be presented at the next meeting, and I think that'll be quite interesting as you look at how we compare with other cities. That's it.
Short and sweet. Thank you, sir. Commission communications. At this time, this is where if you have any discussion about what you'd like to ask us about or any general communication.
Right, I don't have anything this time. Thank you.
No. Nothing? I have nothing either. So future agenda items, I think we have already hashed that out. Are there any other future agenda items that you guys would like to see presented?
Nothing, no.
That being said, time is now. Sorry.
Commissioners, I do have something that from my standpoint, I would like to see come up to the Public Safety Commission in the near future. Maybe not so near future, maybe something more for January, because it is going to be somewhat involved. But at one of the past Parks Commission meetings, there was a discussion about homelessness and a concern from Eureka Community Services District that once the Coast to Rim Trail is complete, that we may see an influx of homelessness and transients coming up the park system, migrating from other parts of the county or neighboring counties. So there was a discussion about, well, what are we going to do? How are we going to be proactive to address this? I don't know if you've seen some of the comments on social media that there seems to be, at least according to social media, an influx or uptick in panhandling and aggressive panhandling. So some of our neighboring cities have adopted ordinances related to panhandling and aggressive panhandling. I do have some samples from our neighboring cities that I will provide to staff, and I would like to see the commission maybe take a look at that and develop something that is the right fit for the city of Eastvale and make recommendations to city council.
That'd be great. I haven't seen what we have in our city with regard to panhandling, so if we don't have much, it's better to get ahead of it for sure. It's tough to address, even when we have ordinances on the books. There's not always enforced by the courts, but still it doesn't mean we shouldn't have them, and it gives a reason for contact, which helps the sheriff's department when they come out to respond. So I'd like to see that. I appreciate you getting ahead of it.
Very good. We'll bring that back to you. I can't give you an exact date at this time because it is a large undertaking,
Yeah.
but we'll have something at one of the upcoming meetings.
Michelle, it's a great point. And I'm sorry. No, go after. I'm sorry. And maybe the sheriff or the code commission can address this. Harupa, do we keep the bathrooms in the park open all night long? And if so, why?
I know they don't.
They do not?
No, they lock
They
them.
do close? Okay.
And it's usually right around the 10 o'clock. They have to get around to the parks. I know I'm at the parks pretty much almost 6 days a week. So I know what times they close, but they do lock them at night. But I know at Harada, we have a couple that regularly live there, pretty much. I recognize them on site, and I don't know about the other ones, but that's the one I'm at most of the time.
No, I'm asking that because a few months ago, I think there was something in the newsletter about a suicide that occurred at the park there. and it appeared that it happened inside of the bathroom. And I want to say that that time that it occurred was after, what time did you say? 10. After 10. Am I incorrect in that? Do you recall?
You are correct in that there was a suicide at Orchard Park. I will, actually, I'm going to pitch that to the lieutenant to see if you know the time of death, because when I was notified of the incident, and obviously I turn around and share these types of incidents immediately with the city council and commission under confidentiality at the time of the investigation. I received that notice at about 9 or 10 o'clock on a Saturday, I think, or Sunday.
Okay,
So I'm not sure if it occurred early in the morning when the park stewards opened the bathrooms, or if it happened late at night, or if by some chance that particular bathroom was not locked. So unfortunately, I don't have the exact answer for you, unless the lieutenant does.
Yeah, what we know is that it happened sometime during the night, but I didn't get an exact time, which would indicate that maybe the bathroom was left unlocked, or I don't know if the individual broke in. I don't remember any evidence showing that. So, but based on the report and what the coroner said, that we believe that it probably happened sometime during the middle of the night.
Well, I know the Parks Department has undergone some staffing challenges too, so some things get overlooked a lot more frequently than they used to maybe 3 or 4 years ago. So there may be a case where they're not getting to them all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I was just going to ask you, you mentioned that there's ordinances. You were going to send to us for review, or was
No.
there?
The sample ordinances would go to staff.
Okay.
And it's just a kind of a baseline
Sure.
for us to springboard from in developing an ordinance and bringing that to the commission for review. So
Gotcha.
staff will be working on something, and then commission can comment,
Perfect.
and then that would go on to city council for their consideration.
My mind is spinning its wheels right now as I'm trying to think. I know that homelessness is not a crime. And I know we're trying to stay ahead of the situations going on in other cities such as Anaheim and the encampments that they are dealing with. With the ordinances that you're seeing and the possibility of putting that in place for our city, and knowing that a lot of the locations of those encampments are not necessarily on city property, and forgive me if I misspeak on that regard, but I believe that it's somewhat of the Army Corps of Engineers, so it's almost like it's almost federal property or government property, so to speak. Could you speak to that and how we might be able to deal with that inclusion in our ordinance?
That's a great question, and that's certainly something that we're going to have to take into consideration in developing an ordinance. It depends on where it's occurring. We do have private property. The shopping centers are private property. There are different requirements when you're within, 100 feet of a freeway on-ramp?
Yes.
Yes. So all of these things are something that we would need to touch on and sort of memorialize. And I'm not sure, when you're in the riverbed, yes, that is, you're starting to get into Army Corps of Engineers, lots of different agencies, JCSD, Fish and Game, flood control. And it gets complicated, but I think part of consideration for any type of an ordinance also has to be some marketing and education and outreach. So we need to know what resources are available, because that was sort of what kind of prompted this discussion from JCSD, was that there was someone that was reported at the Eastvale Community Park as a kind of a nude homeless person sunbathing in the middle of the park. And JCSD said it was very difficult because none of the agencies knew who would take a referral from the Parks District, and does it need, it's complicated. It has to be, there's certain policies and procedures and certain resources, and you know, is there a mentally handicapped component? Is there an addiction? I mean, it's very, is it female, is it male, are they with children, not? So depending upon many, many different variables is how things get routed. And there is a connection frequently between panhandling and homelessness. So it's my understanding some of the surrounding cities have adopted ordinances just to, in a manner to memorialize that this isn't really a welcome activity in the city, and to sort of market that, if you will, to kind of take an education and outreach standpoint and try to get ahead of it proactively instead of waiting until you have an entrenched problem and try to address it after the fact. So it's going to be a lot of stuff to cover. That's why I said I really can't give you a date on exactly when that would come. I know it will not be the next meeting.
Yeah, we also have the added complication that we don't own our parks, and a lot of the time homeless congregate at the parks because they're not messed with. And, you know, we could always look at daytime camping ordinances in the park, but we don't own our parks, so we have to work in collaboration with JCSG to have an agreement that there's no trespassing or certain things that are prohibited in the park. Maybe it's daytime camping or whatever it is. And make sure that we can, our sheriff's department can take enforcement action in a park that we don't own, you know, as long as we have those agreements in place. Right. And sometimes the panhandling can occur like in a center median.
Correct.
And if we don't have an anti-panhandling ordinance in place or other things already set, then we're going to be trying to catch up. And I appreciate you looking at that because it can be a lot of layers. And we have to be really careful as well, because if we don't have certain practices in place and we're asking the sheriff's department and deputies to take action against an encampment, then there's certain laws in place where you can't remove their items. Yeah. Sometimes you have to tag them if they're not present and wait, you know, 48 hours before removing them. So unless we have a clear understanding what our goals are,
Definitely.
we'll be in trouble. So thanks.
Was that now just an item recently brought up at the Parks Commission meeting, or had they been discussing this prior to?
No, you know, I meet with our surrounding city managers every once in a while for lunch, maybe once a quarter, and it was a discussion we had amongst ourselves, and then it came up at the last, not last week's Parks Commission meeting, but the previous month, and they were asking, well, what does the city have on the books to deal with panhandling and homelessness? And honestly, at this juncture, we do not have anything, because we have traditionally not had a homelessness problem or a panhandling problem. So it's something that happens sporadically. The county does a homeless count every year. Last year, our count was 0. Which I'm very grateful for, but I think it would be naive to assume that that's going to be the continuing trend, particularly with you have impacts from AB 109 and all of these other propositions that seem to have a trickle-down effect to the local level.
So I think that leads me back on the future agenda item, because again, the wheels are spinning. The schools meetings, the now Parks Commission meeting, I know we had city council members attending those, and I don't think the commission has had any representation at those. Is it possible that we need to make an agenda item for that, or can we institute the possibility of someone attending on a voluntary basis. Another, one of the, I know the schools meetings are open to the commission, but now being brought to light about this Parks Commission meeting, and I'm not aware that that's something that we need to do as frequently as it may be held, or
No, the Parks Commission meeting, the format traditionally has been that it's city council representation.
okay.
There's 2 council members that sit on that commission. It was formally organized by JCSC. As far as the school committees meeting, that's a quarterly meeting, and there are 2 commissioners that, from the Public Safety Commission, that are supposed to be
Right.
attending those meetings. I
But
can't
think with the start
remember.
of school, that was changed, and with
I'm
some-
sorry?
With the start of school, that has since changed, and we lost hope, and I hadn't even reconsidered joining that meeting again, having not communicated that. So-
Okay. What we can do is add that to the next agenda
Yes.
for the commission to select new representatives for the school, quarterly schools meeting.
Yes. And that's why it came to mind right now. Anything further, gentlemen?
No.
With that, I'd like to say motion to adjourn. 6:59, this meeting is now adjourned.
Thank you.
Thank you.